Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Lounge. Today, my guest is Justin Maxwell, who I also met through the Heroic Public Speaking Program. And we're going to be talking about how to ensure that your wealth lasts and looking beyond the money. So, the quote that I found for today's session to kickstart our conversation is being rich is having money, being wealthy is having time. Justin, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's a really good quote. That'll be really resonate with our topic and our discussion today. That's going to be good. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
You're so welcome. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I know that you're obsessed with helping business owners save money by plugging their financial leaks. A lot of people are always looking at, well, how do I make more money? Or they're looking at things that are inconsequential, but maybe make them feel like they're making progress. And you help to uncover the real holes, the gaps that once we plug them, it's no longer like using a bucket to come out of a sinking ship, and we can actually make significant progress. So can you tell me a little bit more about your background and how you got into what you're doing today?
Yeah, so it's not a normal story. I wasn't someone that went to school for finance or went to school for accounting. I was a school teacher and I taught school. I thought I wanted to be a college professor. But when I was doing my master's degree and reviewing research, I discovered that I didn't like doing research. I love reading it, I love looking at data, but doing research is not in my wheelhouse. There's a whole bunch of red tape. There's a whole bunch of stuff you are in charge of as a researcher.
Yeah.
And if you're a college professor, that's what you do. Like you do research. That's what you're paid to do. Teaching second. So I kind of I had to have a pivot point in my life at that point where I was like, well, I've been in school for 7 years and I now am not doing what I thought I was going to do. So I went and taught normal like educational school because I had a teaching degree because of my education. And so, teaching was not what I was going to do. It was just a placeholder for my next
stepping stone.
thing. So it took me 7 years to discover what I was going to do next and figure out how to make money on my own without having someone else pay me. And it was finance that led me that direction. And I'm fortunate in the direction I went in finance because I don't have the typical approach that most people do because of where I came from. But it wasn't the normal route to end up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and thank you for sharing that because I know so many people who are doing something today that is not what they went to school for. It's not what they studied. And if you would have asked them 10 years ago, 20 years ago, would you do this in the future? The likelihood of them saying yes is very little. And yet it's through the experience and figuring out, well, I don't actually like this, that allowed you to then be open to other opportunities. Whereas if someone had tried to kind of force finance down your throat before, you probably wouldn't have wanted anything to do with it.
Yeah, no, nothing at all. Because to me, when I was in school before that moment, like I had the mentality that sales was rotten, sales was bad, business was not good. Like you just like that was my mentality. It was wrong. I'm going to say that right. It was not the correct mentality. That's not. There are people in sales that are rotten. There are people in business that are not ethical, but that's not the definition that I now live by. So that was not anywhere. If you approached me at any point in my life prior to me having this epiphany and needing to make the change, I would have never said that was going to be a path for me. So absolutely. It just what you said.
I love that. It's really examining your own beliefs and allowing yourself to see something, the same thing, but in a different way. Right. And I think that's true wisdom, is not that we've learned something new or that we, have intellectually forced ourselves into a space, but we actually look at the same exact situation just with a fresh pair of eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is really important for every business, any human, honestly, to not be so set in what you're doing that it's that way forever. Like really be reflective and allow life to change you, and allow it to push you the direction that you need to go. Because if you resist that change, you're probably going to lack fulfillment, lack enjoyment, and not be wealthy. Your time is going to be sucked up in hating life versus enjoying it.
I love that. Yes. And to tie back to that quote, right? The true wealth is having time, and that if you're constantly drained from what you're doing, something I recently came across in this book, Personal Socrates, was about ROE, return on energy. and everybody's looking at ROI all the time and the bottom line, but what about the energy? How do you feel when you do these things? Because if you're constantly drained, if you're hating it, you're finding ways to get out of it, you're wasting your valuable energy and time to not do the thing when that could be repurposed into doing something that is beneficial, whether that's, for your purpose or for your community. And then you'll find that, all of that shifts. And sometimes we need to go down a certain path to realize that, oh, this isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah, no, I love that ROE. We actually talk about that with our clients at times of
Awesome.
when it comes to money decisions. So as we continue this conversation, we can talk about that really in
Yeah.
depth around money. So
Oh, yes, please. I would love to do that. So, one of the things you wrote when we were setting up this podcast was how to shift the focus back to the dollars we've already created and how that makes the financial independence easier. And I alluded to that a little bit in the intro because so many of us are looking at, well, how do I get more? Right. And how do I go create more? But we're not looking at what we already have. So tell me a little bit more about this ethos.
yeah, so the way I like to view it is the people I work with, and please don't get, some people are like, well, I'm not them, so I don't make that much money. But the same principle and mindset is just as applicable to people that are making just like middle class level income versus this. There's always going to be something in your life where you're losing money through inefficiency, where you're spending money somewhere that you don't need to, or you're not paying attention to a dollar, that it's just disappearing. So this mentality of, you have to first recognize I am making X amount of dollars, whatever that amount is, that this is my amount coming in. But when I look at what's at the end, where is it all going? It's disappearing. So life now in 2024 sucks money out of our life faster than it ever has before.
So easy. Yeah.
It's easy to buy stuff online. You can do anything, everyone is calling for your money and you can get it to them instantly in a second. And oftentimes you forget about setting up subscriptions. Like money is always leaving at all times. So it's faster than ever. So if you're not paying attention to that, if you're just letting it happen, if you're on autopilot and just letting things happen to you, it's likely that you have quite a substantial amount of money disappearing unnecessarily. With our clients who I work with, they make top 5% income in the world. Like no one, like they're top 5 earners, top 1%ers in the entire world. And it's that for them. And they also pay way too much in taxes. Like they're not taking advantage of the rules that are in place to make their tax bill be lower. So they're always focused on how can I keep earning more money, which they're really oftentimes really good at. So more money is flowing in, but it just is flowing out as fast as it comes in. We call it the financial treadmill. They're just on this treadmill where they're running the same spot. Nothing's changing. They're really good at making money, but they're not actually building any wealth. Because they're so good at making money, it makes them feel good, but they haven't done anything different than a middle-class American would do. They just happen to have a lot more of it flowing in. So is what you have to think first is, how can I make it so I keep more of this? More of it stays with me instead of going into all these other avenues, the government, product that I don't need, a subscription I don't need, paying off debt inefficiently. Just focusing there first of how can I find dollars that don't need to be leaving me and bringing them back into my attention is the first step to doing what you're talking about. Is you have to make yourself aware that there's actually money leaving you.
Right. Yeah. Awareness is the first step to any change, right? Because we can't shift something that we're not even aware of. And there are so many people. I mean, there's these services that exist now where it finds all your subscriptions and helps you to unsubscribe, right? Because maybe you signed up for that thing ages ago and you don't remember it's $4 a month or whatever it is. And so you don't really pay attention to it. But you do that enough times, then that becomes a significant leak and you're not changing your behavior, right? Because as you said, we're on that treadmill, and I immediately just thought of so many people that I know, and myself included, where I've been there. And you're making a good amount of money, so you don't pay attention to what you're spending. But then every month you look and you're like, oh, I don't have enough savings to quit this job that I don't like.
Yeah.
Or you think you need the things that that job is paying for. Like I think back to 2018 to 2019, I started getting really burnt out at work. traveling too much. I was also using travel to escape from, like problems in my personal life I didn't want to face. So that's another part of it. But I would, at the end of the month, look at my financials and think, okay, what's my runway if I quit today? And it was always not enough in my brain because I thought, oh shit, like look how much I'm spending on my health, right? My mental health. I was going and doing all sorts of things to just be calm and de-stress myself. And I was spending like $3,000 to $5,000 a month, which is outrageous when I think about it. Like no one should need to spend that to be peaceful, right? You shouldn't need to spend anything. It's about living the right lifestyle. But I had the golden handcuffs and I thought, well, if I don't make this much money, I can't afford these things and then I'll be stressed. And then that's not good. So I guess I have to keep doing this job.
Yeah.
So
No,
after awareness, first, if you have something to reply to that, please do.
I think that's really good because the problem is that you didn't feel enough pain about the change. Like the pain wasn't big enough for you to make the change. And that's the next thing is you have to make yourself aware. But then the thing that I notice with people, specifically people that start making too much money, is they just think that, for example, taxes, they're taxable. Let's just say it's 100 grand. That's just a number, 100 grand tax bill. They think that the 100 grand is just a part of life. They're not feeling any emotions around it. But if the tax bill was supposed to be 60, but it was 100, you need to feel the pain of a $40,000 loss. Because if you feel the pain of a $40,000 loss, you're going to make the change. You have to be able to bring emotion into this, because otherwise you're going to have a hard time actually making a change. So make yourself aware and then actually feel the emotions around whatever it is. In your situation, you hated your job and you need to have X amount of dollars. Like that emotional pain needs to be too great that it's going to push you to change. If it's not you hate a job, it's just that I'm not saving enough. I'm not going to be able to create financial independence. Like I'm not going to be able to create assets that are going to replicate my income because I'm spending everything. You need to feel the pain of X amount of dollars every month is leaving you and view it as if someone's stealing it from you. Like if someone stole $5 grand from you, you would feel an emotional response. Like you would feel like a sorrow or abused or almost guilty. Like, how could I have let this happen?
Right.
That's the level of emotion that you need to go to actually make yourself get to change. That something has to be wrong enough. Most people, they're not going to respond to the inside of, well, I'd have the time freedom and I have all this money in the future if I just made this change. So you have to make it negative, and you have to let the negative emotions touch your heart so you actually push to change.
I love that. Yes. Because so many people are scared of this word. Like I talk about this in my keynote also, like the big scary F word. And everyone giggles because they think I'm about to say a swear word, but I then say feelings. Then everyone shifts in their seat and they're a little uncomfortable. But we've been conditioned to not feel the intense things or the unpleasant negative things. And so people just go numb. And that's what I heard what you were saying is, they're numb to the leak. They're numb to just the whole experience, and they're actually spending to also continually be more numb, right? Whereas I think this reframe is very powerful to think like, hey, someone's stealing that from you, right? And it might be guilt or shame or whatever that you're feeling, but you could also just be like pissed off, like, hey, I don't want that to happen, right? So what can I do about it?
Yeah,
I love that.
I love that. The next piece, though, is once you made it aware of it, you're then still relying upon your human behaviors, and human behaviors show over and over again that they're not good with money, that they're impulsive, that they spend. So the next thing you have to have lined up already is you have to have automated cash flow involved in your life. So when things come in, you're taking your human behavior out of it and you're letting automations take the direction for you. So when you actually make the change to eliminate an expense, reduce your taxes, get rid of a pleasure or something that you're currently spending money on, if you don't have something, it's the same thing with habits of like smoking. If you don't have something to replace it with, you just go replace it with another bad thing. So you have the automated system allows you to replace it with something that's good. So anytime money flows into your life, automations send it to spending and to savings. And if you can have those two distinctions, you're going to now set yourself up for creating the freedom you're looking for at a faster pace, because these dollars were expenses. Now they're
Yep.
not. Now they have a job that can be actually used to create more money in the future. But if you're relying on your own self-discipline to do it, it's going to probably not happen for most people. There are people in this world that are really self-disciplined and can do it, but most of us can't. So you have to assume you're one of those people. And even if you are, setting up the automation will just make it even better and easier for
Absolutely. And I think even the most disciplined person will get to a point in life because of whatever. We go through different phases in life, right? Different seasons. And you could be really great one moment and then 6 months later, it was like the slippery slope that started to happen, and all of a sudden you're no longer able to withstand that pressure or that slippery slope, and you've run out of energy, and you can only do that for so much. And so it's this makes it easy to save, right? It makes it easy. Now I do have a question for you. So for people who are solopreneurs or starting a business and their income is inconsistent, there's often an objection here about, well, how can I automate when I don't know I don't have this automated cash flow where I know it's a set amount every month? What would you say to that?
Yeah, really, really great question. The answer to that is there's technologies that can solve that for you still.
Okay.
There's a technology that I really like called Sequence IO. You have
Okay.
to pay $300 a year for it, but it will allow you to create if-then statements inside of the automation. So if I hit this much, it automatically goes here. Anything above that goes to savings. So if I don't get to this level, it's not going to send it to savings. It's still going to go straight to my spending and living account. And that still might not be enough for entrepreneurs and business owners, because they are probably going to have months and periods where it really dips and it's like, I'm just on survival mode. Then you just go to survival mode for a second and you scrap and you save and you make sure that it's happening. But once the thing about the automation being there, this is honestly one of the biggest problems with people, is when the income bounces back up, they spend all the bounce back up. They just spend it all and they didn't save any of it. So if you have the automations already in place, it will allow you to have this amount goes here, but everything above that, I'm automatically saving and pushing to either wealth creation or back to my business or into other asset classes. That's my answer to that. The if-then statements can help with that.
That's powerful. And that's only $25 a month.
It's not very much. And there might even be a lesser cost program. They might even have a lower one for people that are on like the beginning of business. I can't remember. Our clients are always at the level where they just pay for the most expensive one.
Oh yeah, there's one that's $6.99 a month.
Yeah. So like I haven't actually looked into that one, but that one could be a solution for you that would make it really simple. The if-then statements are a game changer. I mean, you can connect it to any account. The cool thing about Sequence, I'm going to brag about them for a second. They come with bank accounts inside of it. So you don't have to go to like thousands of banks and open all these bank accounts. One bank account inside a Sequence. If you want it to go to a vacation fund automatically, if you reach certain levels, it'll automatically spit it off and start another bank account over here. Sorry, my camera over here for you. That's another bank account for vacation. And you can have a bank account that's for emergencies. You have a bank account that's for future investment.
Different classes for
individual pods and their individual accounts that you don't have to go set up all these. They do it for you inside of it. And it's just, you just tell them which one to go to, and you're the creator of it. They have templates for you for like simplicity to the most complex that you could ever imagine. Like, so some people like want to have like a bank account for every expense that they have, which I think is outrageous. But if that's you, that inside of Sequence.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited because that's something that I've been looking for, because I do have a pretty good practice that as soon as money comes in, I'll transfer some immediately to my savings account. That's a high interest yield savings and, all that kind of stuff. But I was always thinking like, well, how do I automate some of this so that I don't have to, do this manually all the time? Because there's going to be some months where I don't do it until the end of the month. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm only going to save this much. But I do make it a point to at least save something to create the habit of, I'm going to put this aside for the future, because I can tell you for sure, if it's in my checking account, I've now gotten myself back to the point where it's like, if I spend on my credit card, debit card, like whatever's in my account for spending, it goes out right away. It's like a debit card. There's no carrying a balance or anything like that. But if it's in my savings account, like it's a process to pull it out
Yeah.
and I feel something about it, right? I have an emotion where I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch that. That's for something else. So it prevents me from just going, oh, well, it's there. I can use it.
No, that's why 401ks are good for some people, because it pulls out before you even see it. Like it's pulled out
Right.
pre-tax. So, that pull out, it removes human behavior from the equation, or it makes it harder for the human behavior to actually be interacted. You could still go get it if you really needed to, but your human behavior has to think, and when you think, then you make a good choice. So the way I like to view this is what's unconsciously save and deliberately spend. Most people right now are unconsciously spending and deliberately saving. So reverse it. So unconsciously save versus versus doing the other way. I messed up the thing there, but
unconsciously save
deliberately
and
spend.
deliberately spend. Yes. I love it. Oh, I spelled the word. I spelled unconsciously wrong. Sorry. My spell correct didn't catch it. This is the problem with autocorrect. I don't know how to spell anymore. And because I use different keyboards for different languages, then now everything's just like, well, whatever you want to say. So, but I think that's so great because we're literally hacking our own systems to make it work, and acknowledging that we have emotions, that we can be impulsive. That's okay. There's no problem with that. And we're not going to change it no matter how hard we try. So we can set ourselves up for success by having these systems in place.
Yeah. And the reason they're scientific, like Parkinson's law is the reason that this keeps happening. If you give yourself space, either time or energy, you're going to consume it. But if you give yourself, the same thing in finance, when you have extra cash, you're giving yourself space, which means you're going to consume it. So this automation prevents Parkinson's law from taking place. And this has a big impact over time, because over time, inflation happens and you keep making more and more money. And if you don't have a system in place, you're going to make more money, spend more money, make more money, spend more money. But if you have automations in place, you make more money, you can spend more money because you can control the automation, but you're bumping it up slowly, which means your savings will keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time.
Right.
Which is how you build wealth, as you get better at saving and you get more and more dollars into other asset classes. But if you never get the saving part right, you can't actually get to the part where you invest.
I love that. Yes. And Parkinson's law, I remember I had a coach ask me once, how long does it take to do a task? And I was kind of stumped, and I was like, what do you mean? What task? He's like, any task. How long does it take? I was like, I don't know. However long it takes. He's like, however long you set. So if you say, this is why being very specific with what you're going to do is very valuable, and say, okay, at 2 p.m. on Friday, I'm going to call this person and it's going to be 15 minutes versus Friday afternoon, I'll call this person. Cause then Friday afternoon is what? It's noon until 5, and then what are you going to talk about? How long? And so then it's too overwhelming. We don't do anything. And I tried this with packing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself literally an hour before I have to go to the airport to pack. And then I cut it down to 30 minutes. And guess what? Those packing sessions, I didn't even forget anything. But when I had the whole day before to pack, I would always forget something, and I would take all day to pack. And it would consume energy, just like in the background, like, oh, I got to pack. Oh yeah, I got to do this, this, and this. So I'm not really focused on whatever I was doing. So it's really powerful to play with. And, 1% every day is 37x in a year for our financial people out there. If you're a pilot, the rule of 60, if you're 1 degree off your heading over time, you're not going to be landing in your destination. You're going to be way off track. So if you just put in these small inch stones, as our friend Sarah Kiernan would call it, then we can celebrate those along the way, reinforce the behavior, and create a really strong system.
Yes. I love it. And the thing that happens when you start doing this is why I want you to focus on the money you've already created, because oftentimes we believe that we can't create wealth unless we invest in other things outside of us. So we believe that wealth is created outside of ourselves, other assets, other people. But when you start keeping more of your money, it reminds you that you're actually the creator of your wealth. And when you believe that and start to think that, it actually allows you to create more wealth, which then accelerates all of this process because you now have more money flowing in to this automated system, which means you're saving more. So it reminds you that you're the creator of your wealth, not someone else.
I love that. And that's a very empowering place to be. And I remember the first time I felt that, because okay, yes, I have a business, but I remember thinking at one point, like the moment is like burned into my memory. I was on this boat after a friend's birthday and the sun was setting and my friend was DJing. And I just thought like, this is what I dreamt of in the past. And I created this. Like I created this community, these friends. I created the clients that I have. I created through creating a product and a business. But even if you don't have your own business, you created the opportunity to get that job. You're doing things within that business that is creating revenue, that's creating value, and you're getting something for that too. So no matter where you are in terms of how you create, everyone's a creator.
Yeah, I love that. A user asked what made you change your belief on sales and business. What you just said, I heard someone speak about, and it unlocked it for me. Like that, I can actually create everything, and if I can create it through a business or through sales, that means that the business owner that I'm going to is also creating that same thing. They're just trying to create their own output and value creation for the world. And if I value it enough, I'm going to pay them. So that's what unlocked it for me, that business and sales was no longer evil, but it was that we're all our own individual creators and people are creating a solution for me to a problem that I will pay them for if it actually helps me do that. So that it ties into how we met, because the only reason I ever went to Heroic was because that speaker that I heard speak introduced me to Heroic, because I ended up like collaborating with them and getting to know them. And so I knew that if I was going to change other people, I had to learn how to speak well, and I could inspire that same change in other people. So big to wrap up our early conversation, like that's how I got over that mental block in my brain, was someone spoke it and it unlocked it in my mind.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, there are a lot of people who now are talking about you Inc., right? Thinking about you as a business and how you you don't just have one client. Like Justin, you don't just have one client in your business, right? But people who are working for someone and having a kind of typical job, that's like having one client. So being able to diversify and understand how communication and story and connection through understanding and shared meaning allows people to create that value, and that's what allows us to make something from what seems like nothing, right? You're just transforming the energy around something and taking, right, this information that's kind of in the ether, and then you're putting it in a systematic way or an orderly way that makes sense for some people, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yes, that's going to be something like the sequence pricing. That's
Yes.
amazing, right? I didn't know that existed. But somebody clearly saw that this was one of the issues for systemizing, and then they created a solution, and now they have a product.
Right, exactly. It's I love business owners now. Like I work almost exclusively with them, and I help them solve problems, and I love that they solve other people's problems. So
Yeah, that's perfect. So now if we're looking at the process of, okay, so we're shifting this focus onto what we already have. So it's first awareness, right? Then it's the second thing is um what was the second thing? Number 3 was automated cash flow, but what's number 2?
awareness, feel it,
Feel it. That's right.
feel it, so you can actually make the change. But you have to have an automated system that the change is going to go into. So have an automated structure in place. You can set this up on your own through your bank. I like Sequence. There's another app called Currents, Currence, that is also really good. It just doesn't do the if-then statement. So
Okay.
for the business owners that are just starting, it's probably not the best of fits because you're going to have those dips. But if you're sustainable, Currents is really great. But have something there for you to actually move into that will catch all of this extra money coming in that you're saving or making more money on, that the excess now gets put into an account for the next thing.
Absolutely. And is there any other steps after that process?
So the way I would say it is, now that you've automated it, now you can deliberately invest. So now you're actually choosing what I invest into. Oftentimes our society will want us to automatically invest. But again, to me, that is reinforcing the truth that other people are going to make me wealthy, not myself. So I want to automate first so that I'm the secure of my wealth, and then I'm going to deliberately invest into things that I want to grow. That's probably going to be in counter to what some people would say, which I
Yeah.
think is okay. But I believe it will inspire you to become a really good investor. So instead of you trusting someone else to
Right.
just automatically put into mutual funds, like, you can learn some skills. I'm not saying become that immediately. Like, I do believe you should have people that are experts at what they do and help you invest and uh, become good at those things. But over time, you can deliberately choose who your team members are. You can have says, and I want to be in this asset class, or maybe I want to be in real estate, or it could be that I'm going to deliberately invest back into my business because I think that has a higher upside than some of the other things that I'm doing. I'm going to bet on myself for those things. So that's the way I would consider it, and that's what I think is the next step. But not everyone agrees with that in the financial industry.
I understand. And, I guess it also probably, again, is going to be, how do people feel about it, right? Are they needing to, maybe they're decision fatigue. They don't have the time or the energy or the care factor to spend time to become well versed in which stocks or which vehicles. So they then, hire an expert to assist them. That's fine. That's why these services exist. It's also okay. I know with like E-Trade or some of these financial platforms, you can automate the money every month from your account to go just over there, and then it's there, and then you can go in and you can deliberately invest, or
Yeah.
you can set up certain stocks that you've now assessed and said, hey, I want these in my portfolio, so every month I'm going to send X amount to each one of them, right? You can set that up. So again, you're not thinking, but you can be deliberate in what you set up, so that it's not just this blank, S&P mutual fund or an ETF that's kind of tracking. Those are also fine. I'm not saying that those are wrong either, but there's options for whatever level you want to be at.
Correct. And I would just encourage people, if you're choosing to follow the deliberately invest mindset, it doesn't mean that you're not doing those things. It just means that you're deliberately making a choice to do those things. Because oftentimes, if you're just automatically investing, you're just letting someone else do everything on autopilot for you. And at some point in your life, you're going to have to become a professional investor, because you're not going to be working anymore. And either you're going to have to trust someone else to run your portfolio for you,
Mm.
or you're going to have the skills for it. So learn the skills along the way to become that, because you'll probably get better. If you become a deliberate professional investor, you'll have better rates of return, most likely, than someone that is just doing it for you. And that's my opinion. And again, that's probably counter to what other people would say. But if you become that, now you actually have the skills to go do it. If you've never become that and taken the steps over time, which could be a 30-year timeline, then you're always going to be in the same spot and relying on someone else
Yeah.
to handle it for you.
And what I'm hearing too is that it's really just taking your sovereignty back rather than abdicating the responsibility and saying it's going to somebody else. And it's like all the ways in which we do that, they seem so small and insignificant, right? It's, why do I have to learn how to do math if I've got a calculator or AI that can now do it for me? Or why do I have to learn how to do this? It's the process of learning that's actually powerful. I still remember like some of the routes I had to figure out direction wise when I was a teenager and driving around. I had to print out MapQuest, and I had to like look at the thing, and I had to like, read street signs. And I still remember how to get to those places without looking at anything. Meanwhile, around Austin, can I get anywhere without GPS? No. Like, I have given that full responsibility over to Google Maps. And then, I've taken lately to just walking around and not using it at all. And now I actually know how to get places without relying on my phone, and it feels better. And I also discover things along the way. So, just like you discovered a new focus and a new track after you realized this wasn't it, that can also be for some other people, the same process.
Yeah. And the thing that's really unique about it, it's paradoxical, because in both situations, you could have someone that's just abdicating responsibility and someone that's choosing to be really deliberate about it, and they would look completely the same. On the outside, no one would have any idea that you did it differently. It's more of the mind first, that I want to learn how to do this. and I'm deliberately doing this with you versus I'm just giving you to just do it for me, and it runs off that direction.
And I think there's a deeper money story here too, which is a lot of people have a narrative of I'm not good with money or I don't know what to do. I'm not going to be good enough, right? There's a lot of other undercurrents that kind of come with the behaviors that we have as humans, whether it's with our money or other resources or relationships. Do you notice a pattern? So if someone was building their awareness, if they're at stage one, what are some of the things that they could look for to trigger, hey, I have this going on? And maybe it's not just happening with my money, but it might be happening in other areas of my life. Do you have some kind of
Yeah.
common things?
Yeah, well, number one, I want to completely reaffirm what you just said, and I'll try and think of some. But number one, like, it's scary as all get out when you take this responsibility, because it's not their fault anymore. It's your fault. So if things don't go well, or if you put your money into something and it fails, it is now your fault, and
Right.
you can't blame the other person. Versus if you've just abdicated responsibility, you can point the finger at someone that was their fault. They're the ones that did it to me. They lost all my money.
Yeah.
So that's scary to take the personal responsibility on that. So, but when it comes to like self-identifying, I would really lean into those questions. If you say, I'm not good with money, or I can't figure out taxes, it's too complex, the tax code's too complicated, or I don't know how to learn how to invest, or I'm just a spender, that's just who I am. Like, ask yourself, why are you saying that? Because it probably runs back to some sort of event in your life that is going to reveal why that happened. And it's really a fake story, not a true story.
Absolutely. And a lot of this stems from childhood, right? It's what were the things that we overheard the parents or grandparents or family members saying, kids are sponges. And while we might not have been super conscious of it, we all had impressions left upon us, even if it wasn't like said outright. We then adopt these stories of, oh, money is hard. It requires hard work. Or it requires time, just all of these things. And it benefits a lot of services for us to think that way also, right? But yes, I think the feeling is really what I come back to, because it's that feeling of peace, right? It's what's going to give you that feeling. And if it's having someone help you and just having kind of basic level understanding, great. But if it's also taking the reins and going, hey, I'm in control of my destiny now, then that's also great. Whatever's going to make you show up as you're like fully alive, doing life in an active way self is probably the best thing for you.
No, absolutely. I love this is a really great conversation. I think what I've learned is that those statements, those stories we're telling ourselves, are us just trying not to reach our full self. And to me, if we're going to reach our full self, that unlocks the wealth, because we're going to have the wealth and the time to actually dive into that. So we have to be willing to actually embrace what is actually true about ourselves. And in my experience, everyone can do this. This is just an excuse that people make.
Yeah. Well, because it can be scary to embrace your true self, because that means things will change potentially, right? Because if you're currently not your true self, then maybe you're around people who don't know the real you. So you don't feel safe, right? And so, or it's once I get there and my life changes, then who do I become and what happens? So it's really also about building safety for yourself by working with someone who can help you understand those stories and, rewiring what that really means and what that looks like, and creating safety. Because if all you've ever known is struggle and working hard, then what's going to happen when those things don't exist anymore? A lot of people get their worth from that, right? And they say like, oh, well, I've worked hard for this, and they like wear it like, I'm really proud of it. And that you can be, of course, but that doesn't mean that you were lazy if you earned it in a different way, right? So there's a lot there to unpack.
It really, this is not a neat. So you're going to have to go through work no matter what you do. Like, you have money coming in, so you have to do it some way. You have some sort of system. It's just, are you willing to put in a little bit more work to create a system that's going to last? Or are you going to put in less work and just kind of let it happen to you with your head in the sand and then get crushed later on because you're not paying attention?
Yeah, Absolutely. And that's the thing is at some point it catches up with us, right? And if we want to step off that treadmill and we want to actually be able to enjoy what we're earning and enjoy our lives, then this is really important so that we can, build wealth and have time to spend with, nobody sets out to make a ton of money to just hoard it and then be like, bury it with me in my pyramid. Like we can't take it with us to the next place, wherever that is. But ultimately that ends up happening because we're working so much. And I remember having a coach, or maybe it was a therapist I was working with. She said, Sarah, how much do you earn? Okay, how many hours a week are you working? And I was like, I am earning less than minimum wage at this point. Like, this is outrageous. And it pissed me off. And that's what was a catalyst for me to start changing, because like that wasn't okay. I was like, why can't I enjoy all these things I'm supposed to be able to enjoy? And so you're right. I had to feel the pain first, and I had to like get mad about it in order to actually do something different.
Uh, I'm really enjoying this conversation. And one thing that I think can help with this is to change your timeline.
Mm,
Oftentimes people have money timelines that are, I'm going to have a 5-year goal, or I'm going to shoot to age 65, but that's a definitive timeline.
right.
Is what I would invite people to start thinking is think on a generational timeline, but not to do what you said, where you're just hoarding money and keeping it all in your household. The reason you have a generational timeline is because you have a generational timeline, you can actually make your money be more impactful for generations to come. And it's impacting more people, serving more people. You're taking the money from being a greed thing to being a tool for good. So
Mm,
to a generational timeline, and it will really change your entire perspective on how many people can I help? How big can we actually go? And it's no longer that big is viewed as an evil perception, but it's viewed as the bigger I get, the more people I'm helping. The more
yeah.
people, the more money I have, the more that I give. And that's not just me, but for a generational outlook on your family and whatever's going forward. Because there's legal structures in place. There's really cool things, at least in the United States, that allow giving to be perpetual, that you can pass all of your wealth through a giving mechanism and just have it be a giving machine for the rest. But if you don't have the generational timeline, you're going to shoot for 65, which is going to put a ceiling on your growth, which is going
Mm,
to prevent you from ever doing that. But if you
yeah,
do
absolutely.
it,
And
it changes it.
it's also just that like long-term view. Have you read what's it called? What We Owe the Future by William McCaskill?
I have not, but I can
I
put it
think
on my reading
I think you
list.
would enjoy that book. I'm gonna just pop it up here too. What I think is What We Owe the Future. William Mc. I might be getting his surname misspelled a little bit, but he is the youngest philosopher at Cambridge University, and he really makes an argument for why the most important person in your life is actually not you or anyone else that's currently alive. It's someone that's going to be born in the future. And he tells you in the beginning of the book that his aim is to change your mind about long-term thinking. And if we all adopted that thinking, we'd have a much different, like our planet wouldn't be, dying and species dying off and, all of these things that we have today, because we would be operating, not in this like hedonist now um, experience. And we also wouldn't be in the like, we can't do anything experience, but we'd be thinking about what are the future generations going to do and how do we build it now for them to keep evolving it. And I remember reading this book and thinking like, yeah, I recycle and I do all these things. And I think about the future, sure. But there's still that, we all have an ego and we all have our own worries and fears. And I was really curious when I read the book. I thought, is he going to change my mind? Like, is he going to really impact my behavior? And he absolutely did. And it's a book that I raise all the time now, because still, even with things like generational wealth, people, they think of the typical, what we see in movies and just like, yeah, they're all nasty to each other and they run their family like a business. And sure, that can happen probably as long as humans are involved, because we're humans.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can use it as a way of thinking about how do we go beyond just the money and how do we go beyond like tomorrow. And we're not just like laying a brick down, we're building a cathedral, right? We've all heard that story of there's a person laying bricks, there's a person building a wall, and there's a person building a cathedral. So if we shift our focus towards the latter, then we start to build things that last, that have meaning, and that serve a purpose long beyond whatever intent we might have originally had.
Right. And I think that again, it just boils back down to that original conversation is you have to see that you're the creator of all of this.
Mm.
If you're the creator of it, you then can create the vision of what it's going to be. So if you're creating the vision that it's going to be trust fund kids and they're jerks and my family's destroying each other, that's what's going to be created. But if you instead create the cathedral, like you just mentioned out in the future, where that's not what this is about, that's not who we are, that's not what the money's going to turn into, it's going to have a likelihood that your children, your grandchildren are going to buy into that cathedral too, and they're going to build it for you after
Yeah.
you're long gone.
Yeah, I love this. I love where this conversation is going. So now, as we look at that, and one of the things you brought up was personal cash flow, and often a hindrance to that. I mean, we've identified that there's behaviors that money comes in and then it goes right back out, right? Because there's like this space, so we fill it, and all of a sudden people get a feeling and they're like, I feel really good, and they start buying stuff, but they don't account for next month nothing coming in or unexpected expenses, right? They don't have these buckets where they've been saving and putting it out of let's say their spending path. And then they might carry debt. I think in the United States in particular, there's a lot of these $20,000 a year millionaires who just rack things up on credit cards and pay minimum payments and perpetually live in this cycle where they can't get out from this. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, personal cash flow and debt repayment strategies.
Yeah. So I think it's important to note that I am a believer that debt is a tool that can be used to be leveraged to help you build wealth and help you secure what your cathedral is going to be. But what we're talking about here, what your question is on, is more of the people that are just getting into debt because of their spending habits and consumerism, and they don't have any control over it. So the way that I would like you to view this is, specifically if this debt is on credit cards, let's just say I think there's credit cards over 20% now. If you pay that off, that's a 20% ROI. So that you are probably going to have a better ROI by investing and paying off your debt versus investing in other asset classes. So if you're having this automated system, which you've created, so now you have money going up here, which you can now deliberately invest, the deliberate investment choice could possibly and probably likely be to pay off the high interest debt as fast as possible, and then allow the new spending habits that you just created through your automation to not allow it to happen again. Now you're only spending with money you have versus spending on borrowed money. Yeah. But that, if you view it through, if I pay this off, whatever that interest rate, that's your rate of return. And you have a hard time in a small microcosm getting a 24% rate of return if that's where you're at. Now, when it comes to like business debt and things like that, the way I would caution people is there's a really big push with a lot of people. I'll tell this story in the lens of real estate because this is usually where people are going to see it. If you have, I need to context the story first, and I apologize if I'm getting too complicated. No. Interest rates matter in all of this. So if interest rates rise above anything above where they're at right now, what I'm about to say might not make sense anymore, and it might be wise to put it off as fast as possible. But where they're at right now, even as high as they are, it still doesn't make sense to pay off your cash flowing real estate quickly. Because once you pay off debt, it goes into equity jail and it doesn't grow for you anymore. It just grows at the appreciating rate, which in most cases is 3 to 4% a year. And so you can probably do better than 3 to 4% a year by investing in other real estate properties than you can by paying off your debt quickly on real estate specifically. So with that said, the motion or the idea that a lot of people have is I need to pay out, they'll buy a rental property and then they'll just dump all of their cash flow to make that go down as quickly as possible.
Right.
Is what I'm inviting them to do is don't do that and go buy other assets and build an empire of assets. And then over time, allow your tenants to pay it off for you because they are going to pay it off more efficiently than you just dumping cash flow on it.
Okay.
The math doesn't make sense. Like you're putting your money into a dead asset. I know you can get access through HELOCs and things like that, but when you need it, oftentimes when you need the cash, it's usually when the bank won't give it to you, because if you need it, there's something wrong with the economy, or banks aren't lending, or you personally aren't no longer eligible to receive a loan because there's something risky about you, that's usually when you need it most.
Yeah.
The bank won't give it to you at that point. So if you don't give it to them, you have it still. So it protects you from an eventual potential event where you might have to now give up a property or give up something because you put all your money into debt repayment where you can't access it when you actually might need it most. So those are the two things that I'd have you think about debt repayment: is consumerism, quickly as possible, and view it as an investment because you're no longer paying the 24%. And then on the other side is, if the leveraged interest rates are low and it's supporting the cash flow, there's no reason to dump cash on it. Just go find other assets with the cash.
Yeah, those are very powerful reframes. I think also looking at that interest rate as a return, an ROI of, okay, it's saving you money, right? If you pay it now versus holding it and then having to pay this. And so you're getting that return. And then once you're free of that, then you're able to automate a little bit more and take some of those funds that were previously paying off your cards to go into other assets.
Which is why that system is so important, because if you paid off your credit card without the system, it's likely you're just going to take that freed up cash flow and just drive it into spending something else. And then because you don't have anything extra, then an emergency comes and you're back in debt again. So you take the extra and now it's in the savings lane, and now you can go deliberately invest it into something else, because now let's say it's $5,000 a year extra, $5,000 a month is now moved up here, not to spending. It was already an expense. So you're already used to not paying it, but now it's actually going to building you wealth. But the automated system unlocked it.
Yeah, and that helps you to stop yo-yoing, because that's what I see. I mean, I've experienced it myself, and even with the best intentions, you can all of a sudden. I mean, I remember sitting there and like getting a credit card statement, going, "No, this is wrong." Like, and taking a calculator and adding up every single line item and be like, "How did that add up to this amount?" All of those purchases, were insignificant on their own, but then added up because it was unconscious and it was just being spent, then it turns into a very big bill at the end of the month, right? And so that's why it's very important to be conscious and aware. And I like that. Yeah, just having what you were previously spending off on your debt repayments, just shifting that into savings, because you're already used to that environment. So shift the habit into something that's going to be more powerful for you.
Yes. If you can catch an expense that was an expense before it turns into a new expense, you have a golden opportunity to turn that into a wealth expense. So just drive it to a wealth expense versus a consumeristic expense. Anytime you save $1, if you can catch it before it turns into something else, you really have set yourself up for success long term. But instead of you trying to do it on your own, let the automated system do it for you, and it will catch it automatically without you having to make that choice.
I just got this visual of, like the train tracks, where it's like there has always been going this way, and then you set it in the automated system, and all of a sudden it just flicks it this way. So it just, now all of a sudden, the train's still automated, it's still moving, but it's going to go over here, and all you have to do is that little switch.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good analogy and visual.
Yeah, I don't know, something about the way you moved your hands just then just gave me that imagery. But yeah, that's really cool. It's very powerful, and I can see some people live joining us, and some of the other platforms are putting a lot of emojis, and it's really resonating. So this is awesome. I do have another question for you. So when we talk about consumeristic debt, there's a couple that people talk about, the snowball method. And then there's also just pay off the high interest ones first, even though psychologically maybe you don't get to celebrate the same way. What would your commentary on that be?
Yeah, pick one.
Just pick one and go with it.
Yeah, you can, if you really are mathematical. There's because those two, think of those two as like the pillars. There's also other ones that might be better fits for you. You can run some different scenarios. There's a software out there called Truth Concepts that you can actually play with a calculator with this and like determine, okay, if I pay it off in this order, like in this manner, what's the result? If I do it this way, what's the result? And you can actually play with it. It's really kind of cool. They actually have because you could do this right now. They have a 30-day trial or a 10-day trial or a 15-day trial or something like that. But you can go to that calculator, play with it, and determine which is the best way to do it. But the way I just like to think is just choose a strategy and just do it and just stick with it. And don't have FOMO that someone else is doing it better than you over here. Just pick one and go all the way through the end with it.
I love that answer. Yeah, I had a coach once say, and I can still even hear his voice, it doesn't matter what you choose, it matters that you choose. And it's just like make a choice and then do it and do it consistently. And I see that this truth concept software also has a training, an academy.
Yeah, they're really you can, like, if you're a numerical analytical person and you want to learn about how money works and you want to just dive deep into it, this is amazing for that. So you'll learn
I'm not
every
a number person, so I probably won't dive into it. But I know that I have number people in my life that probably would just drool over something like this. I mean, I like the idea of it. I just know, like, yeah,
the
I
thing
see it.
that's cool about the people that are numerical is you can see the ripples of choices. So if I make this choice, what's the ripple long term of what happens because I made this choice right here today numerically with this? What's the ripple that happens? So it helps with the bigger picture. But if you're not a numerical person, you're not going to like it as much. Like, it won't resonate with you. But for those of you that are, it can be a good tool.
So I'm going to find someone that's a numerical person and team up with them because I like the ripple effect thing. So I'll have them help me do the numbers part and show me the ripple effects. And then I can go, okay, great. I like these ripple effects. What does that mean I have to do over here? I think this is my strategy. Amazing. Okay. I feel like we could dive into so much more. And I think this is super helpful already for so many people. And so I have a couple questions for you that I like to ask all of my guests. I think I have some idea of what I would classify as your superpowers, but what would you say your superpowers are?
Yeah, so my superpower is to be able to do what you just said, to be able to see all the different components of the financial picture and then see the vision of where we can take it if we get them all in alignment. That is something that I have a skill to do, is I can see the individual things, but also the impact in the future of what can happen. So that's helpful for me. And I'm a really deep thinker. So I analyze things really deeply. So I don't make rash decisions. They're really deliberate when I choose to do something. Those are the two things I would say.
I love that. And have you always been a deep thinker? Do you give yourself, what's your system for success there? Because I know a lot of people that are deep thinkers, but they just have no space to think. And so I would love to hear what are some of the things that you do to give yourself that ability to dive deep.
Yeah, so I love learning things. And so I will choose something I want to learn about, and then I just go full on into it. And I think deeply about the full thing. So, for example, like around the public speaking, when I made the choice that I was going to improve my speaking ability to communicate on stage, I went full on. Like, it was like a year and a half deep dive into every mechanism, how to do it. That doesn't mean I get to the end of it and I'm an expert at it, but it means I know how to do it, and I'm going to get better over time with that. So that's how I do it, is I choose a topic and I just go full head on into that topic, and allows me to think around it. That's honestly the reason why I was able to switch from teaching into finance relatively quickly, is because I can dive deeply into things and learn. And that was my topic. Once I made this choice, that was where I was going, the decision I was going to make. So for me, that helps. But I also have a decent, I have children, so the morning routine is a little bit harder to hold, but I have a decent morning routine that gets me thinking every morning as well, so that I'm purposely thinking about just things in general as a part of that routine.
Yeah, no, I think I'm having the routine and the space to just spend time with something that you're learning rather than trying to drink from the fire hose and then like letting that percolate in your system and take root. Really, I think a lot of times we learn something and then we just go straight to the next thing, but we don't really integrate or practice.
Yeah.
It's funny, they talk about this at Heroic, right? Where it's like the more of an expert you are, the less willing you are to be bad at something, right? And so we tend to then kind of avoid the things that we're not good at. But it's actually in meeting those things and then practicing, like allowing ourselves to suck for a little while, is how we can shift and how we can grow.
No, that's a really, because the heroic thing was a very big step for me. I don't know if people have tell by this, but I'm very stoic. I'm very laid back. But to be captivated on stage and take this personality, which is very melancholy and not exciting all the time, and make it entertaining was a very big step for me in stepping out of the comfort zone of like what is possible, which
Mm.
is still in the realm of exploration for me. So I'm really excited to explore that long term. But that is something that I think can help with the people that like to think deeply. Is we willing to step into the one step that you're afraid of? Because it's
Yes,
probably
and it's just that next one step, right? We don't have to do all 50.
right.
It's taking that first step into the thing, and then the next one and the next one. And definitely you had a big transformation from what I saw, and even on today's podcast I can see. But yeah, anyone who hasn't seen Justin speak, he's a very good speaker. He'll have you laughing. So I think that's worth noting. Okay, my next question is around most people think of a board of directors and they immediately think of a corporation, of a business, right?
Yeah.
But we all are influenced by different things. We all go to certain people. We have mentors. So I always like to ask this question with also the caveat that the person doesn't have to be alive. They don't have to be even someone that you've met personally, right? They can be someone from the past, someone that's famous. It could be an avatar, if you will, like this kind of avatar that is a few different things combined, or people that are in your personal circle. And so, do you have a personal board of directors for the kind of general things that you come up against that you regularly go to, or at least filter information through to think, well, what would they do in this situation? I'd love to hear what
Yeah.
you
So
think.
I do have people that I rely on. So I'm going to start with the people that I don't actually like have, but I follow, and I try to adopt my thinking to replicate the way they would act in specific situations. So that group of people is Michael Port and Garrett Gunderson. And then inside my personal people that I have conversations with are my two business partners, Derek Van Ness and Rob Williams.
Okay.
And personally, I utilize my wife and my parents heavily for like just parental and family based type of things.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's good. And I think it's also what I'm hearing and seeing is that you, based on what it is, you have these different groups of people and experts that you lean on. And I think that's really important too, because if we have just only one person or one mindset of thinking, particularly if it's very similar to our own, we're not going to get a different perspective. And that can keep us, in this pigeonhole rather than allowing us to grow and consider different options. And often, this process, this exercise even is helpful to open up our own perspectives too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, my final question. It's a big one, and I don't know if I put this in the briefing, but it's how do you best represent or serve humanity from the lens of another intelligent life form has come to Earth, and they meet you, Justin, and you're the
Yeah.
first human that they interact with. So, what do they learn about humanity because they've met you?
They learn that humanity is focused on helping and leaving an impact that lasts, that ripples through generations. So they learn that
Mm.
humanity cares about each other.
Hmm. I love that answer. That's a great answer. Awesome. What a great way to end this podcast because I think that's medicine that a lot of people need to hear right now. So thank you for sharing and thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Sarah. I appreciate it too.
Yeah. Justin, if people want to reach out to you and learn more about how to work with you, where should they go?
Yeah, so there's a few spots. My speaking website is justindmaxwell.com. My business website, our business website is biglifefinancial.com. If you're interested in any of our tax services or our wealth management or just thinking differently or making your business valuable, we can help with all of those different things there. I'm also really active. I'm trying to be more active on other social media platforms, but right now it's LinkedIn. I'm fairly, it's at least 3 or 4 times a week that I'll post a thought or something I'm doing at the time so people can follow me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Justin. Again, I appreciate you being here. And for everyone who's watching, thank you for joining the lounge. If you liked today's episode, please remember to like, share it, and subscribe on YouTube. And we'll be back next week with Katie McDonald. She's also a fellow grad alum. And we're going to be talking about how to be intentional with our energy and our time by taking care of ourselves. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.